My friend made this beautiful princess cake for her daughter, and someone looked at her and said, "Oh, you're the next Meghan Markle." And she was like, "I'm more of a Martha Stewart." And I really felt that. But it made me wonder, like, why is there so much hate for Meghan Markle? I mean, she's smart, she's beautiful, she talks about empowerment and philanthropy, but it just feels like every time she speaks, it feels like she's like giving a TED talk or writing a Hallmark card or something. I mean, I just feel like people maybe keep waiting to see more of a flawed, organic, messy version that we all are. But honestly, watching her show, it feels like it's like AI generated and it's just not realistic. I don't know. I want to like her. I mean, when she became the first sort of like black representation in the British royal family, it was like she could bring so much to the table and make such a mark. And instead, she's just falling flat. And it's kind of sad.
Now, I saw that clip, that TikTok pop up in my For You page. The first thing that I actually saw was a stitch where someone was sharing the fact that they were uncomfortable with that video that I included at the very beginning of this analysis today. And there were a bunch of people in the comments section who was vouching for this person's stitch and stating like, well, what would you want Meghan to do? How do you want her to present herself? And the reason why I decided not to include that is because I wanted to make this analysis with a fresh perspective, something that, was free of as much bias as possible. But I want to break this down from so many different angles. Immediately when I watched her clip, this is me taking my emotions out of it. This is me taking my personal experiences out of it, even though I very much so in this analysis today will be sharing some of my personal experiences to highlight this phenomenon that's being depicted here. But immediately what I thought to myself is this, that I guess je ne sais quoi that you feel like Meghan Markle is missing, is simply her not having the luxury to be completely vulnerable because she will be kicked off of the pedestal that people are putting her on. I think a lot of the time when you let people speak, you will hear the answer to their own question. Her highlighting all of these positive attributes about Meghan and like, oh, well, pretty much I don't want to speak for her, but the vibe that I was getting from that clip is almost like Meghan presents herself as a goody two-shoes and as if she's perfect. And when people already view you in that light, there's already that built up animosity and hostility for the most part. So the moment that you make a misstep, you already know that that's going to be penalized even harder or even more intensely than you just being, someone who is presenting themselves in the best way possible. So taking all of those factors into consideration is completely important here. But I also want to highlight a very important thing. We're going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room. When you are someone who was in a particular position, and this isn't me speaking for the young woman that I referenced for this video, but it definitely connects with this point, this phenomenon. When you are a particular person, and I can only speak from a woman's perspective, when you are a particular person in a predicament, you're in an environment, you're in a position that others perceive as, prominent in some way, shape, or form, and that's completely subjective, or you attain a certain level of success, and success is also subjective, but you start to get into certain spaces and you're around people who are internalizing your presence as if you should not be there. They will take you through what I like to call temperature test. And temperature test, and this is why analyzing power is so important for me. And that's why, I talk about the book In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power, and breaking this down in a way that's simple and making it plain. Because when you start to enter into these spaces, you realize that you being cowardice, for lack of better words, and you watering yourself down is completely counterproductive, because when you come into these spaces, they're not going to show you any mercy. And ironically enough, when you step into a place, when you come amongst a particular group, a particular environment, you will realize that you will be taken through a series of temperature tests. And they will take you through all of these changes because there are two conditions in order for you to be there, or at least this is what they convince themselves of. This is why there are certain people where their credentials and their qualifications are null and void. But other people, they can ride off of that comfortably. Their credentials, their qualifications, their experiences, they can ride off of that comfortably. Ironically enough, I was just thinking to myself, there are some things or some conversations that you'll have with certain people and it will completely catch you off guard. You're internalizing their disrespect and you're like, wait a minute. I'm confused, because if we were to step back and we were to look at this objectively, you will realize that we're both in the same place. We're both in the same environment for a reason. Now, granted, there are even some situations where you probably had to work harder. You had to work harder and you had to pull strings out of hats. You had to bend over backwards. You had to be, innovative as far as making things work for you so that you can even get a little foot in the door, right? Or a little toe, barely your pinky toe in the door, versus other people that got to, kind of skate off of, how can I put this? I'll just leave it at that. They just got to kind of skate. And they're completely overlooking and overriding the fact that, wait a minute, you're talking down to me, but we're both in the same room. You don't see the issue with that there? That doesn't sound that doesn't sound weird to you? That doesn't sound out of bounds to you? But what they're really doing is they're taking you through a temperature test. In order for you to stay in that room, in order for you to stay in that position, there's two things. There's two things that they're going to see. They're going to see, or there's two things that they're going to check for. The first is your compliance, and this is a big one. Certain people can only have you in a space to make themselves feel comfortable because your presence is too much, so they have to find chink in your armor. They have to find crack in your armor. So they'll take you through a temperature test where they're going to see your compliance level. Are you someone where if I take you through unnecessary changes, if I move the goalpost on you, are you going to accept that? Because you accepting it is what's going to allow me to tolerate you. The second thing is this. Are you willing to make a fool out of yourself? Are you willing to play a particular role or play a particular character that makes me feel more comfortable? This is where other labels such as like the flunky, right? The sidekick, watering yourself down, not living up to your fullest potential, allowing all kinds of disrespect. And disrespect isn't just limited to a conversation, because quiet as is kept, when you are exposed to these types of situations, you learn the hard way that there are some conversations that you just don't need to have anymore. You'll realize this talk and circle game that people will try to play with you to monopolize your time and to take a toll on your confidence and self-esteem. But most importantly, to hinder your productivity. But nevertheless, even allowing disrespect goes beyond conversation, but allowing people to play with your time and to play with your talent, to milk the clock on you. I have an analysis breaking this down, and it's referencing an excerpt in the book In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power. How sometimes people, in order to make themselves feel better about you being in a particular predicament or an environment in a position, what they will try to do is they will milk the clock on you to make themselves feel better about, being around you. Some people like the idea of controlling your destiny, controlling your potential. So that's the second test that they will take you through, is to see, okay, are you willing to take on the role that I assigned to you? And that role is going to be contingent upon me being superior and you staying inferior. Now, I don't really get too deep into like my, personal story times and things like that. I like to keep it as general as possible so you guys can relate. But when I saw this video, I couldn't help but think about experiences that I've had since I was a little girl in grade school. And you guys are familiar with me talking about interactions that I've had with peers, like a few interactions that I had with peers relevant to a lot of the topics that I talk about on my channel. But I don't think that I've talked to you all about me navigating certain spaces as far as like my performance was concerned. And the reason why I don't lead with that is because I think a lot of it is just, I think God has kind of wired me that way to where I don't necessarily lead with my performance, because what's most important for me is if people see my life, I want it to be a testimony to the goodness of God. But also, I want to acknowledge the fact that maybe some of that is a little bit of trauma, if I'm gonna be completely honest, because since I was a little girl, especially for my specific grade school, like our school district, we had these things called academic tracking, or it was a way that curriculum was established. Academic tracking was designed to put students in certain classrooms and in certain settings based on their academic performance. Since I was really, really young, a lot of the time I would get placed into certain environments because of my performance. And, typically I would be outnumbered. And when people, and kids pick up on this as well, when people realize that you are outnumbered in a particular way, that's when you'll experience a lot of friction because you won't have an ally, because people have an idea of who should be here and who shouldn't be here. So needless to say, I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. And I would have to experience instances where my peers would be talking, but they would shift the blame onto me. And then I would get in trouble for it by the teacher who already didn't want me there, who already felt like I shouldn't be there. And when I would defend myself, I would get reprimanded for it. So from a young age, I kind of already knew that performance didn't necessarily, or rather, let me rephrase that, performing quote unquote well didn't always result to positive results and consequences. Fast forward to where I'm a full-blown adult. I'm in another environment. And now I have a say-so, right? I don't have to answer, right, to people who are, older than me, and they're using that as leverage. Now, no matter who I'm encountering, you're quote unquote, like we're in the same boat. We're all adults. We're all in this together, for lack of better words. Now, I'm a little bit more sensitive to these types of interactions because when I was younger, I started to write it off as if like, well, they're just older. I'm not necessarily sure what the ropes are. But see, now that I'm in a predicament to where I'm responsible for myself, it's a little bit different. The reason why that woman's video and her take stood out like a sore thumb is because I remember being in an environment and the very first thing that they told us was, oh, well, we're not necessarily interested in, you doing super well or you performing at your absolute best. I said, okay, that's very interesting. Okay. At this point in my life, at this juncture in my life, I just do whatever I need to do and I do it to the best of my ability, but I'm not necessarily tying it to certain accolades and achievements. Like I said, I've deprogrammed from that since I was a little girl. So I'm like, okay, they're giving us this speech. Okay, that's nice. That's nice. Fast forward, me being in this environment, experiencing so much moving the goalpost. And I remember I was like, wait a minute. If I go above and beyond, I'm reprimanded for it. When I take your advice of, okay, you allegedly say that jumping through all of these hoops isn't important, I'm gonna go ahead and dial back. So now I'm in a state of confusion because I'm not understanding that there is a principle that has been implemented, such as moving the goalposts. So now I'm confused. Like, well, what do you want from me? What is all this issue? Sure enough, once I'm finally at a place to where I'm like, I can't keep doing this. I have other things that I'm responsible for. I have other tasks to fulfill. So what are we doing? How are we going to proceed forward? I need a tangible, goal. I need something that's tangible and I need something that's consistent to where I'm not building on sand. We need to have a stable foundation because it doesn't take all of this. And that's what you'll learn as you get older. All of that confusion and that back and forth, there's an underlying issue there. It is not as difficult. Even when we think about communication, there's not that much confusion in the world. Something else is lying beneath the surface. And it's designed, to keep you in the dark and to lack clarity. But nevertheless, I finally was like, you know what? I can't. Clearly there's an issue on your end, but there's not an issue on my end. And we need to address this incompatibility here. We have a separate meeting, and one of the first things that one of the ladies says to me is, because at this point I'm completely indifferent. I'm like, I don't have it in me anymore. I just need us to focus on the task at hand. I can't keep doing all of these mental and emotional gymnastics. And quiet as it's kept, this is a professional space. I shouldn't have to do all of this. We're in a meeting. They give me news. I'm not going to explain, in detail how I knew that it was coming, but just know that the Holy Spirit is very real, and the Holy Spirit will give you a heads up before someone tries to pull the rug from under you. And that's another tactic in the book, Green Eyes. For those of you guys who already have the Green Eyes book, understanding what I'm describing right now could be better explained by studying excerpts in the book, such as the pull the rug technique. But nevertheless, we had a whole meeting, and like this person gave me news, and it was designed to pull the rug from underneath my feet, but I was calm because I already saw it coming. And the person interjects and says, well, it's okay for you to be upset. It's okay for you to be upset. And I looked at them through the screen and I said, honestly, I just don't have that in me. But what I knew in that moment internally was, that's what this is all about. Me being calm, me being quiet, me not feeling the need to come in here and jump through hoops. I'm just here to do a task. I'm just here to do what I signed up to do. I'm not here to do all of these mental and emotional gymnastics that these people are trying to get me to do to make themselves feel better. It clicked for me and I was like, that's what all of this is about. Is you want to see me go through all of these changes. You want this to be emotionally and mentally taxing for me because something about me just simply being quiet and calm makes you uneasy. Because you've been able to successfully break other people down who do come in here and present themselves in a confident manner. It all clicked for me. And I said, oh, okay, I get it now. Didn't sweat on it, didn't even talk about it. I said, okay, now that I know that that's how you're moving, I'm going to be mindful of that when I move forward. I'm thinking that we already squashed this. Lo and behold, a couple months later, a whole new issue is manufactured out of thin air. I said, okay, now I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do this. This is too much. No one else is going through all of this. But see, spiritually, I didn't understand the fact that this was a battle of spiritual mantles. Something about me being too confident was being perceived as me trying to present myself as if I was perfect. How the two correlates, I don't know. But this person was trying to convince me that me being calm, because I acknowledged the fact that I can't jump through too many more hoops if you're never going to be satisfied. I'm doing all of the things. I'm showing you that I'm showing up. I'm showing you that I'm willing to meet you halfway, but you keep creating and manufacturing a new issue. There's nothing else that I can do. You have to be able to perceive that this is a you problem. But they didn't perceive it that way. They perceived it as me being, quote unquote, too perfect. I said, I don't even know how the two correlates, but just understand that I don't have the emotional and mental. I don't have the energy to keep doing this back and forth with you. Either I've signed up to do what I agreed to do upon coming here, or we're going to agree to disagree, and we're just going to go ahead and wrap this up because all of this isn't a part of what I'm up here to do. This has nothing to do with my responsibilities. What is all of this? But like I said, I didn't understand at that time when I was going through it. It was a battle of spiritual mantles. Whether this person is spiritual or not, I don't know. But me personally, I was like, spiritually, this is a battle of confidence. And you all have heard me reference the scripture before, Hebrews 10:35, that talks about, so do not throw away your confidence, for it will be richly rewarded. And this is why I break down to certain people the importance of pivoting. And this is coming from an individual who I've been in certain environments where people would give their right arm and their left leg, to be in a particular setting, to be around a particular group of people. I've been in those kinds of environments, but I saw the trade-off of it. They're telling you and they're showing you that you have to compromise your confidence and your dignity in order to stay here, because they're going to take you through all types of temperature tests. In order for you to stay here, you either have to comply or you have to make yourself look bad so that they stay superior and you stay inferior. So when I break down on my channel the importance of understanding that pivoting is not giving up, because as long as you succumb to that person's agenda, you will never reach your fullest potential. They're already showing you through their consistency and moving the goalposts that they have no intentions of you being in that environment and reaching your fullest potential. They're already showing you that. So how could pivoting be equated to giving up? If anything, you're giving up on your potential if you stay under the dominion of someone who has no intentions of helping you reach your fullest potential. So really, when people are saying certain things like you present yourself as if you're too perfect, or we would much rather see a more authentic and vulnerable version of you, knowing that the moment that you do that, they're going to capitalize on your weaknesses and your vulnerabilities. This is why you have to be careful. You have to be able to perceive when someone is fishing for information out of ill intention. Someone who already has that built up hostility and animosity towards you, let me tell you something. Someone who is already perceiving you wrong. And this is different from you initiating that poor perception. You talking down to them, you disrespecting them. See, that's your own doing, but this is completely different. This is a separate scenario. You're coming in, you haven't even given someone something to work with, and they're acknowledging that, and they're villainizing that already off the rip. They're acknowledging the fact that you haven't given them anything to work with, and they're still villainizing that. That goes to show you the moment that you show your vulnerabilities, your authenticity, you're transparent, all of that is going to be utilized for their sinister agenda. They're going to capitalize on that. They're going to exploit that. So there's no purpose of you showing your hand because they're going to use it against you. So understand this when people are saying certain things such as you present yourself as if you're too perfect. You could be vulnerable. You need to be more authentic. What about being quiet isn't authentic? How do you not know if the person is an introvert? How do you not know if someone needs time to observe an environment and warm up to it before they can get comfortable? How is that not authentic to who they are? The two don't even correlate. The two do not even correlate. So if you let people speak long enough, you will hear the method to their madness. And you'll most importantly understand their intentions for you. But nevertheless, this phenomenon and people's certain take on the video that I included at the very beginning, and mind you, this isn't me tearing down that woman, but when people were giving their responses, I said their take on it is completely valid because as someone who has lived this myself, it's a real thing. Even if that wasn't this young woman's, intention. For individuals who have encountered those who did have that intention of taking you through all of these unnecessary changes, it's all about a temperature test. Because always remember, someone who feels like you shouldn't be there, maybe there's some hostility because they feel like they should be in a position that you're not, that you're in and they're not. And sometimes people can even be threatened by your potential. You're just getting started and they're already trying to nip you in the bud. That's another tactic in the book, Green Eyes, nip in the bud tactic. They're trying to nip you in the bud because it makes them uneasy that you already have a pretty good footing as far as where you're headed. You have your head on straight, and that in itself makes someone uneasy, especially someone who has preconceived notions of who should be in certain spaces. Or sometimes they're mad at the fact that, okay, you're in this space, but you don't want to pine for my affection, my validation, and my approval. That makes me uneasy because I've been successful at making other people do so. So you being confident and you being like, that's fine. You don't have to like me. I don't have to like you. We could just stay in our own separate corners. That's completely okay. See, that will still make someone uneasy. But always keep in mind that when people are taking you through unnecessary changes, when they're moving the goalposts with you, this is another tactic in the book, In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power. They're taking you through a temperature test. And the goal is for you to do two things. And if you're not, you typically get booted out. But the two things is this: you comply or you subject yourself to an inferior position. But to describe this further, I'm going to read the Compliance to Control Pipeline excerpt in the book, In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power. Compliance is often presented as a virtue, even reinforced with rewards. Yet compliance can be a subtle form of grooming for control. When one submits to another's control, consciously or not, they ultimately compromise their autonomy. Positive reinforcement is frequently deployed to mask the deeper cost of this compromise. In systems of power, loss and wrongdoing are inevitable. However, the truth often becomes evident only when individuals advocate for themselves. At that moment, they are confronted with the harsh reality. The oppression they face is a product of their earlier agreements. As the saying goes, the devil is in the details. Within these systems, agreeing to the positive means accepting the unspoken negatives, even if they were never explicitly communicated. Coercive systems label free thinkers as disruptive or argumentative. They are accused of creating hostile environments, but this is a facade. In truth, free thinkers threaten the system because of their keen awareness and refusal to conform. To prevent others from following their example, such individuals are often punished harshly. ostracized, shamed, or given symbolic, quote unquote, scarlet letters. The goal is to instill fear in others and maintain control. For many, compliance appears to be the safer option, yet this illusion of safety is fleeting. Subordinates are manipulated into positions of fear and submission, believing compliance offers protection. Over time, however, the truth emerges. Compliance becomes a cage. So in sum, you have to be careful with prioritizing being liked or being likable, because likability can become a liability. All right, you guys, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning into this video today. But of course, I want to hear you all's comments, perspectives, your personal opinions, as well as your personal experiences in the comment section below. I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next analysis, babes. Take care.